of the story is about. In fact, on the CBS News story, there's a picture above the news story of a row of AK-47s, as if this guy was packing some, you know, military-grade arsenal of weapons, when it's got nothing to do with his gun. It's about the fact that he tried to defend himself and was arrested. I mean, look at Switzerland. Most of the population's packing AK-47s, and Switzerland has one of the lowest gun crime rates in the world. The gun crime rate in Switzerland is so low that they don't even keep statistics for it. And that's because in Switzerland, owning guns is rooted in the culture. In fact, the government in Switzerland runs all the shooting classes and all the training. You know, it's almost illegal not to have a gun in Switzerland. And what's the result? Gun crime figures lowest in the world. I mean, look at the Nazi occupation. Look at the map of the countries that the Nazis occupied during the Second World War in Central and Northern Europe. You'll see a big swath of it all circled round, coloured red, and there's one little area that's a different colour, and that country is Switzerland. Why? Because one of the primary reasons Hitler was afraid to invade is the fact that he knew the vast majority of the population were armed, and that the Swiss are a citizen army. Their population is their army. Now, the people in the Warsaw Ghetto didn't have guns because they were immediately disarmed when the Nazis moved in. What was the first thing that the Nazis did when they occupied a new country? Rise and fall of the Third Reich. Read it. Austria, Czechoslovakia, Poland, they disarmed the population. That was the first thing they did. And in the United Kingdom, we're also becoming a disarmed population. We've been disarmed of our firearms. Now we're being told we can't carry knives. And then you get a story like this George Greer incident in Long Island, and that's why I'm asking the question, you know, is the Second Amendment dead? A man's home is his castle. Is that idea now being thrown out in America? We're going to move on to our next caller, which is Robert in California. Robert, you're on the air. Go ahead. Oh, sorry, Matt in Minnesota. Matt, go ahead. Michael in Sweden, you're the next caller. Go ahead.
Hi, Paul. How are you doing today?
Hi, how are you?
I think it's outrageous that the Long Island man got arrested for defending his property and his family of this notorious MS-13 gang, you know?
It is outrageous, and I mean, what's the situation in Sweden? I'm guessing that Sweden is a largely disarmed country, or is it more like Switzerland? Tell me about the gun control laws in Sweden.
You have to have a special license in order to get a gun or a rifle here in Sweden. We are probably the most disarmed people in Northern Europe, I believe. And I don't know really if if the people even care about gun laws here, because all the more people are going to prison for life sentences, you know, for murder and stuff. And I don't know really if the politicians are going to bring this up, because we have a general election coming up here in September, and I don't know if they're going to take up this issue, because I feel it's very important, you know.
Yeah, I mean, just look at the example of Switzerland. As I just said, they don't even keep records anymore because the gun crime's so low. But everywhere else you look in Europe, some areas of France will allow you to have a hunting rifle, which is why a lot of British people are moving down there. One of the primary reasons, because there's a little bit more freedom. But generally across Europe, the laws are harmonised in line with you know, some of the most draconian gun laws on the planet, which is why violent crime is constantly increasing. Talking about Switzerland, we're going to go to a clip which perfectly discusses and exemplifies why the country has such a low gun crime rate, because the majority of the people own guns and are encouraged to do so by the government itself. So let's go to that clip where the gun control situation, or lack of it, the gun ownership situation in Switzerland is exemplified. Let's go to that clip now.
This is a SIG 550. It's designed to destroy anything standing within its 400-meter trajectory. And there are over 500,000 of them kept in Swiss homes. Guns and shooting are a strong Swiss tradition. Basic military training is mandatory for young men, and afterwards they're required to keep their weapon at home. Mark Heim is the Ticino representative for the lobby group Protel.
Basically, this was my father's military rifle, and of course he got to keep it when he was finished. I have my grandfather's rifle in the office, hanging on the wall. This was mine when I did service, which is quite an old one. It was introduced in 1957. It was used until 1990. And this is my son's. That's the current model. That's what's being used today. That's what we'll be using to shoot the Feldschießen today.
The Feldschießen, or Tiro Federale in Campagna as it's known in these parts, is an annual Swiss event, and it's also the largest shooting festival in the world. Roughly 200,000 people come out to target practice all across the country. Ammunition is provided by the government. Heim goes regularly to this range, and it's often a family affair.
It was organized by the government to have a very high state of readiness for the Swiss military and population. The target has always been that within 24 to 48 hours, Switzerland could mobilize a pretty large army, I mean, even by European standards.
But it wasn't the militia that sparked Heim's interest in guns as a young man. It was an unassuming trip to a Holocaust museum.
I was going through all the exhibits and the soap and the lampshades made of people's skin. And while I was looking, I heard a funny noise, and there was an old woman maybe 2 meters from me, and she was trying not to cry. She was sort of sobbing very quietly. She was holding it back. If she had been a few meters further away, I wouldn't have heard her. And she obviously had gone through that. That's when the whole impact of it hit me. And I promised myself I would never be in her situation. I would want to be free, never in a situation where somebody could, march us off to ovens or prisons or just take away our freedom. The key to freedom is the ability to be able to defend yourself. And if you don't have the tools to do that, then you are at the mercy of whoever wants to put you away. And the tools for that.
There you have it in Switzerland. The ability to defend yourself is the key to freedom in a country where the government itself runs all the firearms training classes, where there's 2 million Swiss citizens who are armed out of a population of about 6 million, and they've got the lowest gun crime rate in the world. This is the reason why Hitler refused to invade Switzerland, because he knew he'd have a hell of a fight on his hands when every other country around it had been occupied, and the first thing that Hitler did was to disarm the local populations. We're going to be back with some more of your calls. We got Gerald Celente coming up in the second hour. But stay there. Gus, Ruth, Dennis, Sid, we'll get to all of you on the Alex Jones Show at prisonplanet.tv. Stay tuned.